Hey guys, welcome to episode
2.
2 of Teens and Faith Catholic Conversations. I'm your host, Annie, and I'm joined by my co-host, Gianna.
Hey, what's up?
So before we get into this episode, we wanted to start off with our prayer. O Saint Philomena, Virgin and Martyr, pray for us that, through thy most powerful intercession, we may obtain that purity of mind and heart which leads to the perfect love of God. Amen.
Amen.
So Gianna, what do we have coming up this episode?
This episode, we will be interviewing my dad. Hope you guys like it. I don't know if this is going to be kind of boring or not. He kind of rambled in some of it. I don't know. I'm just warning you guys before you listen to it. But anyway. All
Personally, I found it entertaining, just saying.
right. Well, I guess so. I don't know if she's just being nice or not. She
No,
might
it
just.
was actually entertaining.
Sure, sure. Okay. So what have you been up to, Annie?
Nothing much. How about you, Gianna?
Nothing much.
Okay.
Nothing much. Like you haven't done anything. Just
Are you actually gonna? Okay. All right. So I may or may not have torn a muscle or something in my knee. I don't really know. Okay.
oh
Basically, okay. So, this is a long story, so buckle up. Okay. So we went sledding, and I was like, so I just got home from orchestra, and I was like sitting at the table eating. And my dad was like, "Hey, you're going sledding with us." And I was like, "Dad, like, I really don't want to. Like, I want to like focus on school, blah blah blah." And he's like, "No, you gotta go." And I was like, "Okay, how do I get out of this?" So I was texting Gianna, and I was like, "Gianna, tell me you have to call so I don't have to go sledding." And she was like, "Okay, Annie, you want to call?" And I was like, "Yes, I'd love to call." And then my dad was like, "Perfect, you can call her while you're sledding." And I was like, "Oh, that backfired." So I was sending Gianna videos of us sledding, and it was like, I will admit, I haven't gone sledding in like 3 years, but it was pretty fun. Um, and so we were like wrapping up, we were getting ready to go home, and Benjamin was sledding down the hill, like kind of crouched, like on his feet, not like fully standing, but like it was pretty impressive he didn't fall. So, me being the brat of an older sister I am, I was like, I need to one up Benjamin. So, I was telling my dad, I was like, I'm gonna go and I'm gonna fully stand up and I'm gonna go all the way down the hill fully standing. And he was like, You will die. We'll play this at your obituary. I hope you know that. And I was like, I'm not gonna die. Like, I'm gonna be so good. So, I get going. And I started like just crouching down, and then I stand all the way up, and I stayed standing for probably zero point 0.5 seconds, and then I hit some ice. I flew off my sled. I landed really hard on the ice, and I landed directly on my knee, and I just like cannot breathe for a second. And I was like, okay, catch my breath. Like I'll be fine. Whatever. Gianna's laughing right now. Thank you. I appreciate that. Um,
hey,
so
look.
my dad my dad is just dying of laughter, right? And he got this all on video because he knew I was gonna do something dumb. So he's just dying of laughter, and I'm like in the video, you can hear me go, ow, 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 and I'm just like grabbing and hugging my knee. So he was like, Annie, come on, get up, you're fine. So I tried to walk up the hill, and I just couldn't do it. I just collapsed. And he was like, do you need to go to the ER? And I was like, no, I'm fine, I'm fine. So I like hobbled up the hill on one leg, and I was just like crying this whole time because it hurt so bad. And so I finally get to the car, and I like get in, like I hobbled. I was just like walking on one like leg the whole time because I could not put any weight on my leg. And I was supposed to go nanny like 30 minutes after we got home from sledding. So I was like just gonna like I was just gonna be fine or whatever. And then my mom looked at my knee and she was like, "That does not look good, Annie." So and I like I said, like I couldn't put any pressure on it. So we go to the ER, and the like nurse is checking us in or whatever, and she's like, so what happened? And I just like kind of like sat there, and my dad's like, you want to see the video? So we ended to tell the whole story, and turns out I pulled or tore, I don't know what's the right terms. He was like, the doctor's like getting super in depth. I tore my meniscus, there we go. And basically like the tissue or whatever is like some way like attached like this. I know you can't see me, but it like got unattached right now, and now it's trying to go back. But if I don't do certain stretches, it's gonna grow back, and I'm gonna have knee problems the rest of my life. So I gotta make sure I do stretches, and I have a knee brace, and I'm on crutches right now. And if my knee doesn't get better, I have to have an MRI on Monday. So, moral of the story, don't one up your brothers. It's not worth it, and crutches hurt your arms really bad. So, Gianna, are you sure you haven't been up to anything?
What? Wait. Okay. So you say nothing much, and then you go on a rant about what?
Okay, I was not gonna tell that on the podcast. That's embarrassing.
Well, it needs to be told. It's a good life lesson for everybody. Yeah, don't one up your siblings. It's not worth it. For many
It was
reasons.
it was so funny though because like the video's hilarious because I just like screamed and I fell off my sled and my mom was just dying of laughter. Like I'm sitting on my floor just like crying because my knee hurts so bad and my parents are just dying of laughter about how funny this video is. Like obviously we were about to go to the ER or whatever, but it was they say they're gonna meme me because it's like one point I'm on the sled and then I just biff it and just tumble on the snow. Like it's so bad. Even when I showed Gianna, she's like, okay, it's not funny that you like almost broke your leg, but like the fall was really funny. And I was like, thank you. Thank you,
Yeah,
Gianna.
it was though. You watched the fall and it was funny. Like, okay, so yeah, obviously it was terrible the way it ended up and everything. But yeah, well yeah, because she was texting me and she's like, oh, I may have broken something and I was like, no, she's probably just being overly dramatic. Like something must have hurt really bad and it's like, oh, it's okay, it'll get better or whatever. And then she's like, yeah, I'm going in. I'm like, wait, what? What are you talking about?
Yeah,
We're
that
going.
that was pretty funny.
Yeah. hmm well, I did not have an exciting or shocking experience as you did, Annie, but I went to the store.
Wow.
Yeah, I know, right? That's a lot of fun. No, I went to the store. I found this one aisle. So there's this store called Woodman's. It's mostly in Wisconsin. There are actually a few in Illinois too, I think. But uh they have a lot of like gluten-free and dairy-free stuff. So, and then Annie can't eat gluten or dairy because she can't digest it. So, there was this one aisle, like it was a really long aisle all the way down aisle 23, I believe. Yeah, I remember the aisle. It was
Thank
insane.
you.
It was insane though. All the way down, it was gluten-free and dairy-free stuff. And my mom and I were just like, whoa, Annie can come here. Annie can eat anything off this aisle. It was just insane. They have a lot of stuff there. It's kind of like Costco, but like less crowded. Um, the people there are still pretty touchy about a lot of things, just everything in general.
Oh
Plus
man.
we came down this one aisle and there were a bunch of dads it looked like, and they had no idea what they were doing. Like they were obviously shopping and they were probably shopping for their wives, but they had no idea what they were doing. So there was this one guy who kept going back and forth and like obviously did not know what he was looking for. And my mom needed to get in there, but he wouldn't stop moving. So she was like, forget it, let's just go.
Okay, that's so funny that you say that because I feel like that's so stereotypical of like husbands not knowing like where stuff is or just like men in general not knowing where stuff is. Like, for example, my older brother Elias has his license, so he's always running errands for my mom, but I always have to go to the store with him because he knows where nothing is. It's so funny. And like my dad doesn't know where anything is either. So like one time my mom was sick and we needed like gluten-free buns for something and he was just like calling me and he's like, "Okay, where are the buns?" And I had to like direct him like exactly where the buns are, and it was just funny. But
That is funny. Yeah, boys don't know what they're doing in a grocery store most of the time, and I feel like girls, like if they're sent to like a hardware store or a tool shop, they have no idea what they're looking for either. It's the same thing either way.
yeah.
Yeah. But anyway, now it's time to interview my dad. Hopefully this goes well. All right. So, do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself?
I would love to. My family, I was fifth out of sixth, and three boys and three girls. And I'm the fifth, so I'm the youngest boy, and I do have a younger sister. And I was raised in the basically in the Novosoro Church. My mom was a pre-Vatican II Catholic because of her age, but because when she was born. But then she just went along with the priests when Vatican II came and the changes. So she just went along with it. She was aware of the traditional Catholicism through our involvement, but she has passed away about 10, 12, 11 years ago. And so she would go regularly to church, and I don't remember praying the rosary with her, but I do believe that she prayed it regularly. My dad was not a churchgoer at all from his earliest days. Once in a while, he would go with us, and I remember one winter day, he decided to come with us to church. And as we were walking from the house, he slipped on ice and landed on his back. And so as I bent down to see if he was okay, he said to me kind of quietly, so my mom wouldn't hear, and he said, "This is what I get for going to church," he said with a smile on his face. But he later did convert in his mid 60s to the Nova Soto. So that was his journey. And I remember going to mass, and I liked the sermons. I always liked the sermons. I liked the readings a lot. I was very puzzled by the kneeling, standing, sitting, kneeling. No one ever explained any of that to me. I do remember liking one priest in particular, Father Dan. They all went by their first names, and they would glad hand up and down the aisles, shaking hands and things like that in regular session of the mass. And we liked all of us kids liked Father Dan because he was kind of funny, but when it was really hot out, he had very short sermons. So that was our kind of our take, my siblings and I. In the Nova Soto, the confirmation, the way it was explained to me, is when you are ready to confirm that you believe, you have confirmation. So when you're about 15, I wasn't ready to do that, and I never did. So I was never confirmed. And if I were running a podcast like you two ladies are at your age, it would probably have to be called Teens Without Faith, Ignorant Conversations.
Oh
So
man.
I'm going to trademark that because I think there's other people that would probably want to take advantage of that name. I hate to give the free ideas out here. And that, of course, is assuming that there were podcasts when I was 15, or the internet, or electricity. If any of those things existed, that might have been the path I took.
Okay, interesting. Interesting background.
So now we're wondering, how did you convert?
Now, this, Annie, is where we're going to have to rely on your editing skills. Because if I go on too far, feel free to just to lop it off. So I'll try
All
not
right.
to. But it is kind of lengthy, and let me tell you why. Because, more serious note, briefly, your audience, your audience of teenagers, should plan on major temptation in the next 10 years or so. And that temptation is never things like, I was tempted to eat broccoli, but I toughed it out and I had a cookie instead. Or I toughed it out and two-fisted some donuts, like some of your guests have done.
Right.
You can edit that out if you'd like.
I'll keep that in because he'll hear
You'll
it
keep
and he'll
that
love
one in?
that.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so I wanted to talk a little bit about first, the way to deal with that is prayer, and nothing is more important than our salvation. And it's vital that people know that when you are tempted away from the faith, that whatever works for you to keep you in it. And I will give you a very specific for how I did it because of my mentality. Don't think that this is all original to me. It's just how I kind of adapted what I've read, and don't think I'm giving myself props for being clever or anything. Some of this I talked to your dad about, and we shared some of the same takes on Protestantism and so on. But he did it when he was 18, and he had those questions. I was in my 40s, so I'm not giving myself props on this, but I am going to go into some detail on the process that I used, and if this helps people avoid the charges on the internet of the atheists and the things that they say out, then that would be good. So the first thing I did, well, what happened was, even at that late date, I wasn't too interested. I was indifferent. I wasn't going to church. I felt I was a bit of a hero for going once a month with my family. You remember those times? Is this the time Dad's going to go or not? And so it wasn't like I was really feeling a void, and I should have been, and I wasn't. But I came upon an article or a website on the Shroud of Turin. And the Shroud was, I remember being fascinated by it as a kid and reading about it, and then understanding what radiocarbon dating is. And that was an infamous set of tests that supposedly proved that the shroud was dated to the 12 or 1300s. It's not true. It's not a valid test, and we can talk about that later if you'd like. But I thought, just reading through it, so now this is kind of slamming that carbon dating when I came upon this maybe in 2016, and I was just convinced from a fairly quick read that the shroud is in fact the burial cloth of Jesus. That is his image and his blood. And so then I thought, well, what are the implications of this? And the next step I did was I read through all the parables and was very, very pleasantly surprised at how difficult those are and how much Jesus really makes you think. And he was not just giving it away. You had to earn it. You had to earn that thinking. And in fact, I redid that with Gianna this past spring, right?
I think it was the winter though.
Winter? Okay.
Yeah.
So what'd you think of that, going through those?
It was interesting. It was very hard to read. I remember liking some of the parables. Like I remember some of them stood out to me more because I actually understood them better. The Good Samaritan I liked. And just but yeah, they're very difficult to understand. Like Dad and I would sit there for like an hour to like an hour and a half maybe, just talking and trying to figure out what each parable meant or like what Jesus was trying to explain in it. So yeah, it was interesting.
And I liked the two or three of them where the apostles pulled them aside afterwards and said, um, yeah, what does that mean? And so it was good. It was nice to see that they were as dense as me in reading through those, but they were fascinating and they're coherent. They do make sense. There's always some element that is a little puzzling, but I thought that was great. Then I read through the Gospels and the Book of Acts. And the Gospels, those things will take maybe a month of Sundays. Spend some time reading that. I strongly encourage people to read through the Gospels. I found it fun to go through. Very easy to read the stories. The Jesus sparring with the Pharisees was fun. I personally found some humor in some of the imagery. When St. Peter walked on water, when Jesus walked up to them, he got out and he started walking, and then he realized he can't walk on water, and then he sank. And of course, he can walk on water with Jesus, with his faith, but reminded me of those cartoons where the coyote runs off the cliff, and then runs off the cliff and is staying midair, and then looks down and says, "Oh, I can't do this," and then they come down. So I thought that's the visual that I got from that story. Great thing. A lot to be gained from the turning water into wine. There's 180 gallons of wine. I mean, that's a party. The fact that Our Lady said to Jesus, "Hey, by the way, they're out of wine. You might want to do something." And he said, "Hey, my hour has not come yet." Like, woman, why are you doing that? And she apparently just kind of ignores him and says to the servants, just do whatever he says. And of course, he performs his miracle. So, and I have no doubt as that a wine steward would say exactly what the wine steward said in that, well, this is unusual to have such good wine at the end. Usually you give the good stuff in the beginning, and then when people are too drunk to taste anything, then you give the vinegar, the bad stuff.
Mhm.
And so that sounded very credible to me. So those were some of the takeaways that I had. And then in the Book of Acts, that one was I liked that as well, and it's written by Luke, so it's the second of two parts for him, and it's very, very historically accurate. There are dozens. One book has 84 different instances that Luke got very precise details right, like how the best way to travel at that time, what the currents were like, what the names of the offices in the different places that they went to. And then my favorite story probably is this one. Paul was speaking, and remember, this is Luke narrating, and Paul said that, or Luke said, Paul kept talking until midnight, and a young man named Eutychus was sinking into a deep sleep as Paul talked on and on. Eutychus fell out of a third-story window to his death. Paul ran down, covered him up, and said, no, 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 he's fine. He healed him. And then you'd think maybe Paul would, okay, maybe I'll cut this short now and be done. It's after midnight. No, he continued talking until daylight. And it's funny that St. Luke is kind of calling him out on that. But it's interesting to me. And then to me, a few things as I was reading it, some things jumped out. They there was an attempt in the early days of the church to harmonize the four gospels, and even today, that's a big thing that apparent supposed contradictions in the gospels. Well, you wouldn't have that if you would bring them all together, right? It was called a diatessaron, and the church said, no, we're not doing that. We're going to keep these, even though it brings up these questions. And I thought that was an interesting approach that they had. There's a couple more things, and I'll give you my summary of it. But there's no firm author for the book of Hebrews. So that's kind of odd that if you were making it up, you would assign it to somebody. Why is Mark one of the authors of the Gospels? Why not Peter? If you're really making this up, you'd have somebody close to Jesus in the stories writing this. So, and the answer is very simple if you think about it. The church and the founding, or the fathers, the church fathers, they revered the script. They revered the words that were there, and they were not going to even harmonize the four gospels. And so that's a strong indication that they knew it was true. So then after that, my next step was went into science. And I'll only say, I'll be shorter on this part, but let's say we have two entrances to our living room. And let's say I walk in and a plushie comes flying, zinging past my head. Now, it's not that unusual of a situation. And then I turn and look and no one's there. Well, what can I conclude? Well, I know it's not Gianna. It's probably not the dog. It's probably not my wife. So then it's one of the two little guys. One of them is sitting here, by the way. And but the takeaway is, think of that living room as the universe. And can we explain everything we see in the universe by staying in the universe? And the answer is no, we can't. And I'll give you one example, DNA. DNA is an instruction manual, and it tells the cells what to do. Name an example of any kind of instruction, so directions to do a certain action that doesn't involve intelligence or a mind. And the only example I can kind of think of is if you're building furniture that comes in a box, you're assembling that. And like from IKEA, anybody who's tried to assemble a bookcase or something like that, and you read the instructions, I'm convinced those did not come from any advanced life form, the instructions. But aside from that little joke, DNA shows that you can't answer what we see in the universe by staying within it. So there are many other examples, but that was the science angle that I had done. Because you can't be a Christian without believing that there's an unseen realm that intersects with the seen, all things seen and unseen, right?
Yeah.
And then my favorite part of the journey up to this point was when I came upon Isaiah 53. Isaiah 53, if you read that and you could ask somebody, and in fact, people have done this, they've asked Jewish people, and they'll say, here, read this story, Isaiah 53, it's in the Old Testament, and you read through it, it's Jesus. It's absolutely Jesus dying for our sins, and people thinking that he died for his own sins, and he didn't. And it goes on and on. And even the Jewish people that have been asked this, they'll look at it and they'll say, I don't want to see your New Testament writings. It's not. It's in the Old Testament. It's written like 600-700 years before Jesus. And I did a lot of research on that one because some of the rabbis had very credible reasons why you wouldn't read it as Jesus. That's a misreading of it. But I found this Jewish man who is he became an expert on Hebrew because he had a conversion to Christ, and he kept hearing, well, you don't know how to read the Old Testament because you don't know Hebrew. So what did he do? He learned how to read Hebrew. And he demolished the rabbi's take on it. It's a legitimate messianic prophecy, hundreds of years before Jesus. So then what I did was I wanted to identify how can you fake it with a prediction? Well, there's two main ways. You can misread the prediction to make it fit what happened, the fulfillment, or you can contrive the outcome. If I say, I predict this glass is going to break, and then I knock it over, obviously it's not a prediction, right? So then what I did was I looked up, there's hundreds of messianic prophecies, and most of them just tell us what to expect and about Jesus, but I don't think they're designed to be proof that these are about Jesus. It's just, this is what Jesus will do. So what I did was I identified about 8 different traits of the Messiah that only fit Jesus. He had to be a Jewish man who was rejected by his fellow Jews. Again, this is Old Testament, what they're saying about the Messiah, hundreds of years, thousands of years before Jesus. He would be rejected by fellow Jews. He would be tortured. He'd be murdered, yet exalted. He was made world famous. The Messiah would be made world famous by non-Jews, the Gentiles. And through him, the God of Israel will be known. And here's the kicker. That Messiah wasn't just a Jewish man. He had to be a first-century Jewish man. There is no one else that fits that. There is no world famous, just take a few of these. There's no world famous Jewish man from the first century that satisfies all these things. So that was it for me. So I knew that not only is the Old Testament right, but the Christianity is right. And then I did go into trying to figure out on denominations. Incidentally, once you establish for me, once I established these 8 that were really incontrovertible, you can't really argue against them, that they refer to Jesus and only Jesus. Then you can look at the other ones, and there are a lot of fun ones. There's the virgin birth it's very explicit in the Old Testament. So that's one example. Then I did consider other denominations, and I'm going to turn the tables on the two of you here for a real quick question. Let's say I'm a Protestant, and I ask my fellow Protestants, is abortion okay in the first 3 months? Some will say yes, and some will say no. Who decides? So just take a stab at it. Who in a Protestant type of environment would decide the answer to that question? Who wants to go first?
Gianna
Annie.
does.
All right, I'll go first.
No peek.
I'm not. I think so in a Protestant type of thing. Okay. So no, I'm not looking at okay. I think that it would be the priest who decides because in the Protestant area, it's like the people will go to the priest, and the priest is kind of like the mini pope sort of thing. So the priest kind of decides everything. So I think he would be the one doing it.
Okay, Annie?
I honestly don't know how to answer that. I kind of think like the people decide because their church is just like so warped and corrupt that like they just get to choose their own rules kind of, but I don't really know.
That's very close. That's how I ended up answering it. They don't have priests, but they do have pastors. And you would ask, I know somebody that is a Protestant, and his term, not mine, he said that the pastors of the different churches are like mini popes. So they would go to that person. So you maybe read a scholar that answers some questions, or you'd go on the internet, or you'd ask your pastor. But ultimately, what happens is, let's say I do that, and I think abortion, as I do, abortion is evil and it's wrong all the time. So my answer would be, even as a Protestant, no, the answer is you can't do that. That's not right. And I would check these sources out and still not get a solid answer. I'd go to the pastor. Let's say the pastor said, yeah, the first 3 months, that's fine. Well, what I would do next is I would quit and find a pastor that agreed with me.
Mm.
And they have a phrase that if you go to the next level, which is called planting a church, they would plant their own church. They would start their own church. And I know people that started over disputes with the pastor. So yeah, it would be me. And that is not a solid way to do, as much as I'm fond of myself. That's not the solid way to run things, big questions like that. So
Yeah.
Protestantism was out for me.
How much you're fond of yourself? Do you consider yourself in a high position?
I can't hear. There's something wrong with the mic here.
We're
Wow.
always
Okay, I don't want this to drag out, Gianna. So let me go.
fine.
You
Do
okay
what
with
you
that?
need to do.
Annie, tiebreaker, anything?
This is a family dispute. I'm gonna stay out of this.
Howard. Okay. So then let's move on to Catholicism. And so here, very different, right? In a functioning Catholic Church, it is traditionally you go up the chain, and the Pope and the councils will determine. And so now I looked, okay, well, I imagined a Catholic or a Christian, we'll say it that way, from 600 years ago, and brought him up to the current time. This isn't new to me, this kind of thought experiment. 600 years ago, they would likely recognize very much of the Latin Mass. And to be Christian at that point and before that point meant to be Catholic. It just did. And so that was a big step in saying I would have to be a traditional Catholic. Another, though, was I've been to both. I've been to the Novus Ordo, and I've been to the traditional Latin Mass and the post-Vatican II Latin Mass, and they're very different. There's no doubt about it. The priest faces the parish, and you have lay people handling the host. You have lay people handling the wine after it's all consecrated, actually distributing. A friend of mine at our church left the Novus Ordo, and one of the reasons that he did was he was second in line. You stand up, you don't go to a communion rail, you walk and you're in the aisle, and so now you're second in line, and the priest, the man in front of him, the priest or the man, you don't have it put on your tongue. It's put in your hands. So now you're touching it, and you put it in, and the man dropped it on the floor, and the priest just said to him, "Oh, you got that?" And so the guy essentially picked it up off the floor, blew off the fibers of the host and took it. And so this is Mr. Bremner, and he had other reasons, but he said, no, 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 that is not right. The true presence, and yeah, so
Wow.
that's really it. It's very different. The post-Vatican II and the pre-Vatican II, and that brings up the obvious question of are those differences important? And they are. There's a lot of information out there, but so I'm probably not going to go into detail on that, but there's a lot of differences, and they're significant, like whether the church is only the Catholic Church or the Catholic Church is a part of the church. And Vatican II says it's a part of the church. And the obvious next step is, well, what's the other part? Legitimate question. What's the other part of the church? So it was following this line of thinking. If any of anybody, if the teenagers, if this helps any teenager who is tempted in the future to abandon traditional Catholicism, I encourage you to follow the steps because it's a very, very reasonable faith.
Um, so when you converted, how did you know that it was a sign from God?
Well, I took a leap, not a leap of faith. In this case, it was a literal leap. So in the northern part of the United States, it gets very cold in the wintertime. Annie, you agree?
Yeah, it does. It gets very, very, very cold.
And it gets dark at night, and so you find other ways to entertain yourself. One of the things we would do is we would have contests, and one of our contests was to stack cushions and jump over them. And I remember we were doing this, and normally it was pretty easy for me because I'm an adult and they're kids. And this particular time, though, cushion by cushion, they were keeping up. My Gianna was keeping up with me and Elias, and Gianna was 11. She was all legs, so she's just flying over this stuff. Elias is tall and skinny and competitive, so he was flying over it. And so each cushion, they're right up with me. And I thought, well, this can't be. And finally, Elias knocked the top one down. And so we put it back up. Gianna knocked it down. So now all I had to do was jump over all of them, and I win, right? So I did, and my joy, my euphoria, as I was soaring over this tall tower of cushions, didn't last long because I landed and my socks slipped on the carpet, and I started to fall backwards. And it was awkward because I didn't want to knock over the tower and start over, right? And so I slipped and fell. And the way I caught myself, you can imagine if you try to lift yourself out of a recliner or any chair that has arms, you just put your hands back and lift up.
Mhm.
Well, that's how I landed. And so I know I did something wrong. It hurt. But then I did look up at the little faces stained with tears of defeat, and I knew this pain was worth it. So
Okay, that did not happen for the record. We were not crying.
Oh man.
The rest of it happened, yeah.
So what I did from there is, and this is the whole time where I was considering all of the foregoing, all the stuff that I had mentioned about converting. And about 5 months later, it hadn't gotten better. And every time I would turn in bed, or anytime I would play catch with the kids, I would feel my shoulders it would be painful. And so I finally went in and had an MRI and found out that each shoulder muscle, the labrum shoulder muscle, was torn. So I had two tears, and they said it won't get worse, but you can try to build up the muscle around there, or you need surgery. And for about 5 or 6 months, I did different exercises to build up the muscle. Nothing seemed to help. So I was finally at the point of thinking I better consider surgery for this.
Mhm.
And it was around Christmas time. We had been in Florida. Then we went back north for Christmas. And so for a few weeks there, I didn't do much exercise, or, I didn't play catch or anything. And right at that time, I started praying for generally what I would do is I would pray this way. I would say, God, I am going to convert to traditional Catholicism unless you show me very clearly that this jeopardizes my salvation. And I prayed that multiple times a day. So we get back down to Florida, and maybe a week later, I was playing catch with one of my sons. And after about 5 times throwing it, it occurred to me that it didn't hurt anymore. So for 10 months, it hurt, and then it stopped hurting. And every so often, I can still feel it. It's not healed to the point where if I went into the MRI, I imagine I'd still see it. I don't feel it. So it has not affected me now at all. So even for me, not very astute on some things, this was my sign. So then I did convert.
Okay, that's
Wow.
interesting.
Yeah, that is a really cool conversion story. So now we're gonna kind of change the topic a lot. What do you do for your job?
I heard about this, Annie. I'm an accountant. I'm a tax accountant. And I heard a follow-up of some young podcaster who's not related to me is like, why? What do you like about that? Um, what I like about it is it's the language of business. And so once you are in it, you can stay in the business world and you can do various different things. And you're very flexible on where you go because every for-profit or even not-for-profit business needs accountants. So that's my little pitch on it. What do I like about it? I like early on, I did a lot of consulting work, and this is a typical example. Somebody come up and say, "We're thinking of growing our business into Europe. Um, where should we go, and how should we do it?" And the how would be, do you buy a company that's there, or do you build one from scratch, or some combination of that? Which country to go to? What are the implications for how much it can cost with the labor market and so on? So I enjoyed doing that. Now I have a different position. Like I said, it's a very flexible degree to have. And now I'm officially titled, uh, what is my official title? Oh, Senior Program Analyst. That's what it is, Senior Program Analyst. And so what I'll do is I'll handle big projects. Typical example would be I have multiple a small group of people that I work with, experts in different fields, and we develop a program, and then we roll it out to people to implement the program. 100 or 200 people, and so I enjoy that.
All right.
I wanted to add something in. Um, so obviously the world needs tax accountants, but this is actually coming from the mouth of my mom, who was an accountant before too. Um, don't do it. Don't go to school for it. And she highly would not recommend doing it at all, like unless you like want to be like my dad or my mom and just decide to go do it. Obviously you need them, but just wanted to make that clear.
Oh, when we started dating, we had some exciting conversations about the tax code. Don't, yeah.
Oh man.
What kind of conversations did you have?
Well, again, I want to keep this thing moving. I know that there's a high mark of an hour and 4 minutes to beat, but I don't plan on beating that.
Well, Kevin Davis did go like an hour and 30, 20,
Oh
right?
yeah, I think.
Oh,
Yeah.
really?
So, yeah, he went yeah, longer than Father McKenna, so that was crazy.
Mhm.
Very
Yeah.
good.
So if you want to fill up the rest of the time talking about taxes, don't do it.
Well,
I'm
I know.
good. Please don't.
Do it. No. All right. Yeah. So before we started this interview, Dad wanted to sing a song. Like he wanted to sing all of the say everything in a song version. And I'm like, no. But Annie's like, yes, you should do that. That would be hilarious. And I'm like, no, this is something we will never agree on. So he is not going to be singing a song. I really hope that the majority of you are not disappointed by that. Anyway, moving on.
How will they know? How will they know what they're missing? All right, go ahead.
All right. So how did your YouTube channel start?
I have a YouTube channel called Shrewd Manager Christianity, and it is not a compliment. It is Luke chapter 16 has a parable about a corrupt, dishonest, but worldly manager, and he is stealing from his master. The master in this is God, and so that's one of the more baffling parables. But I thought that was a good take for my video channel. And so the background, and this would be my other little suggestion for teenagers, is we all have talents. We all have a calling to honor God and to help. As Jesus put it in the temple as a young boy, that to do God's business. And so it makes perfect sense that you should use these talents that you have to do that. And it's a way to acknowledge the talents without any pride because these are God's. And so I encourage all teens to treat it like any other gift. When you're a kid, you're very excited to get a gift and you open it up. be as excited about your own talents that you don't know of yet. Try different things, open them up with excitement, knowing God gave those to you. For me, a way to look at it is stacking talents. So do you have, everybody has a variety of talents, and maybe you can stack them in a way where they are used more useful for doing God's work. And in my case, I had to say God gave me some abilities to simplify and simplify complex things. And when he would, when you have a talent stack, look at the different talents that you have. And for me, my work has given me, has shown some talents to simplify complex things, to make them very brief. A lot of what I had to do was try to persuade the a business executive with the business executive mindset. Business executives are not more ethical than the average person. We're not wiser. We're not better. We're just not more ethical and more honest. And but what we do have is, let's say we're looking for a profit. Well, we'll try anything to get to that profit. And if we pick a way or a path, we will do that until convinced that there's a better way to make profit. So that lets us really consider all ideas. And in this case, I picked a topic, the Shroud of Turin, that was important to my faith, but the church does not require that we believe it's authentic. So it's perfect. I can just follow the evidence wherever it goes. So what I do on my channel is I have 35 videos so far, probably 8 or 10 more on the Shroud. They're about 7 minutes long. There's visuals to hopefully reinforce the narration. And I strive to start with the evidence and then do simple inferences. And I'll give you an example. How do we know that the Shroud depicts a crucified man? Well, you know it, you follow the blood trail. So you have one wrist has a wound and there's blood trail down the forearm. The other wrist you can't see, but you see the same trails. So you can assume that it's the same type of injury. And gravity being what it is, you have to say that the arms were outstretched at that time, slightly over his head. The side wound has blood and water. It's a lung fluid. It's been tested to be a lung fluid, and that is dripping down, straight down the rib cage. So that tells you two more things: that the torso was upright, so the arms are elevated and off to the sides, a little bit higher. The torso is elevated and he's dead. You cannot have that lung fluid come oozing out of you without being dead. Then you have indications of bent knees, and you can't maintain that posture. No one can maintain that posture for very long. No living person, and long dead bodies are very limp. So there's rigor mortis. So that's within the first 3 days of death that you would have that level of rigor mortis. So that's the kind of thing that I do throughout the videos. Here's the evidence, here's reasoning from it. I point out the reasoning, I give my positions, I give areas where you can do your own research and make up your own mind. So that's what I'm doing now with the Shroud of Turin. My next series will be on messianic prophecies. Beyond that, I don't know what I'll do.
That's interesting.
Yeah.
So forgot to mention.
If you guys haven't seen his videos, you have to check them out. We will put his channel link in the description because they are really interesting and like my whole family loves them.
Yeah, I just wanted to say I forgot to mention that he has a YouTube channel before I asked this question. So, called Shrewd Manager Christianity. So, anyways.
So our last question we have for you is, where do you do your research when you're looking into your videos?
Right now, I go to shroud.com. There was a group of scientists in 1978 that for 5 straight days, they had access to the Shroud. And they did many tests on it, the blood stains, what kind, is it a painting? And they just looked at in many different ways. They found pollen on it, they found limestone dust and so on. And one of their number was the professional photographer. And he got to a point about 15 years later that he knew all kinds of scientific papers were out there, but there was no one spot for it. So now that I have a good understanding of the shroud, I go there and I can look up very specific scientific papers, peer-reviewed papers. There's just a wealth of information there.
Good.
All right.
All right. Well, thank you for coming on and talking about your conversion and Shroud. So we really enjoyed having you on. And do you want to add anything else before we let you go?
The reading assignment, go to the parables, go to the Gospels and the Book of Acts, and you will not regret it.
Okay.
Thank
All
you
right.
very much for having me on. I'm very, very happy that the two of you have decided to do this. Many people have ideas and they never implement them. So the fact that you currently have about 14 of them posted, and I know that you interview many people for these. So I'm proud of you both, and I think you're doing a fantastic job.
Well, thank you.
Thank you. So that wraps up this episode, and thank you guys so much for listening.
And next episode, it's gonna be interesting. We're not going to be hosting it. So, yeah, I hope you guys like it, and I hope it goes well. It's kind of terrifying, just thinking about it. But yeah, so we won't be hosting it. And yeah,
That's all we're gonna say. It's gonna be super fun. I mean, I hope it's gonna be fun. I'm like Gianna said, I'm actually scared, but I'm pretty sure these hosts are pretty capable. I hope so, but
there's always hope, you know.
there's always hope. We're gonna start filming, and they're just gonna like, never mind. Okay, I can't say anything else.
Yeah.
But
Let's just say we
so
don't have faith in them, but we have hope in them. Yeah.
yes, exactly that.
Yeah.
All right. So remember, moral of the story, guys: don't one up your siblings.
Yep.
But yeah, as always, God bless, and Saint Philomena,
Powerful of God, pray for
pray
us.
for us.